All right, hello there, folks. Hello, folks, and welcome to the Jefferson Educational Society Global Summit 2025. For those of you I have not had a chance to meet yet, I'm Ben Spagan. I'm a vice president here at the JES. My job tonight is twofold. One, I'm here to welcome you, and then two, I'm going to moderate tonight's conversation. An important note about tonight's conversation and some housekeeping that I'll say now. First, if you don't mind, join me in taking out your mobile devices, placing them in silent or airplane mode, or simply turning them off out of courtesy for your fellow attendees as well as tonight's guests. Of course, photography is welcomed, so you can keep them handy for that, but please silence or airplane mode. Also, important and integral to all of our conversations that we have here at the JES is this is not a one-way road or a one-way street. It's not French, it's not Peach, but really it's State Street, a two-way road, and we're located on State Street. Two-way means we're also looking for your participation, meaning audience questions. If you didn't get an index card on your way in, certainly one of our helpful team members or volunteers will help you get one of those. We ask for that because we're asking for you to write down your questions. As tonight's moderator, I know looking around this audience and a bunch of bright folks with us tonight, no doubt the questions will be of excellent caliber. Penmanship, however, I don't know. So I'm counting on you to have great penmanship so that I can read them and we can get through as many as we can tonight before we conclude tonight's conversation. One more thing I want to note in housekeeping. Of course, tonight's a Monday, and we have several things happening this week. Now, importantly, tomorrow, no events here. Why? It's election day. So if you've not yet cast your ballot, we encourage you to do so. Practice democracy. Be an active participant in your own democracy and help elect those that you wish to see lead the region through various offices that are up for election. On Wednesday, however, we do come right back here to the Jefferson Educational Society for a conversation about faith and politics and their intersection. We welcome the 48th Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, in conversation with former Grove City College President Paul McNulty. That conversation will be moderated by Steve Scully of the JES team. So we look forward to seeing you here then. On Thursday, we head down to Gannon University. We turn our attention to international relations. We're looking at autocrats versus Democrats, Russia, China, and the new rise of the global disorder by former Ambassador Michael McFaul. That'll be hosted in the Yale Room, where most of our events are at Gannon University. So we look forward to seeing you there at 7 p.m. And then a special event on Friday, first time ever for our organization. Grateful to be partnering with the Tom Ridge Environmental Center, TREC, to take a documentary screening out to TREC, All Too Clear, taking a look at invasive species in the Great Lakes. We will, watch a smaller version, a shorter version of that documentary, and then we'll have a robust discussion with the filmmakers themselves. They will be in town for that, so we look forward to seeing you Friday. And wait, there's more, but I won't read them all off because you can pick up a brochure on your way out or head to our website, jeserie.org, to see all of the events going through the rest of November and including our special event in December with Henry Louis Gates of Discovering Your Roots fame. One of the things that really powers the Global Summit is that it is not a singular lift. The Jefferson Educational Society does not do this alone. We are able to do this and have this volume of programs and this caliber of exceptional leaders, practitioners, folks bringing their big, bold ideas into our smaller neck of the woods because of the number of community partners we have for this, many of whom you saw on screen before we started tonight's program. One of those that has been with us for a long time is Erie Insurance. We're grateful for their continued partnership and sponsorship of events like the Global Summit and, of course, the many other contributions they make to the community. Here to offer tonight's official introduction, please join me in issuing a warm JES Erie, Pennsylvania welcome to Mark Dombrowski, Vice President of Government Relations at Erie Insurance. Mark?
Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Ben. Ben is a blessing to all of us. I can't stop listening to Ben. I'm going to apologize in advance because I asked the mayors. We had a little workshop this morning with some community leaders, and I took the opportunity to say more about myself than I did about them. And I asked them if that was okay again this evening, and they said, "No, that's fine. We can digress a little bit." And anybody that was at the session this morning, you're disqualified from answering any of these questions. I think it's appropriate that we have 3 mayors here, since after tomorrow we will have a new mayor-elect in the city of Erie. So it's exciting times for Erie, Pennsylvania as we move forward. One thing that the Hagen History Center posted over the weekend, it's the 60th anniversary of what important event in mayoral history in Erie, Pennsylvania? The first election of Louis J. Tullio. In 1965, he was elected mayor-elect in Erie. The question I asked this morning that stumped some, I also was a little irritated because I said, how many people remember that? And this morning, there were a lot of young people in the crowd and not many. I might have been one of the few that lived through it. But who did he defeat in the primary election? Does anybody know? He didn't win the primary election. He lost to Mike Cannavino. And 11 days before the election, Mike Cannavino passed away. He had a heart attack. So Lou Tullio was that. My last name is Dombrowski. Some of you may know that I have political roots in Erie. My dad was a state rep for 20 years on the east side of Erie. Back in that day, Erie was kind of separated. If you weren't a Polish East Side Democrat on the east side and an Italian West Side Democrat on the west side, you were never going to serve in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives from districts 1 and 2, right? State Street, dissected. You had Bellamini, you had Capabianca. It changed now. Harkins lives on the west side. But back then, Lou Tullio, with an Italian name, lived in the 5th Ward. He lived on East Grandview Boulevard, and he had a very nice house, and he befriended a lot of Polish people on the east side, including my parents. So my dad and my mom worked very hard on his first campaign to become mayor, and about 5 years after that, 1970, for the first time, my dad ran for state representative and won, largely because he had bipartisan support on the east side, but he also had a big nudge from the mayor, who at that point was entering a second term. So it was interesting for me to have the opportunity to introduce this, because it could take me back to my family roots, which I enjoy doing as much as I can. My dad's he passed away 30 years ago this November 11th. I remember he didn't go in the hospital for surgery until the day after the general election because he was politicking. He was only 66 years old, and he unfortunately never made it out of the hospital, so he died on Veterans Day. But I have political blood running in my veins, and that's why I like doing. That's why I'm retirement eligible, but still working at Erie Insurance, because I have a lot of great opportunities. So you're in for a real treat tonight, because I did get to hear the mayor speak this morning, and there's going to be a lot of relatable things that you're going to hear that happened in their great cities. We have Richard Berry, Greg Fisher, and Bill Peduto. Mayors really do have the nitty-gritty work. It's a lot different than all politics is local, so they're making the decisions. You're going to hear about garbage pickup, you're going to hear about paving roads, but you're also going to hear about having to come up with economic development programs to move cities forward. Mayor Richard Berry is from Albuquerque, Greg Fisher is from Louisville, and Bill Peduto is from Pittsburgh, and they know the job well. Mayor Berry led Albuquerque to the ranking of the 2nd best run city in America during his tenure from 2009 to 2017. Louisville's mayor Fisher was honored as the nation's most innovative mayor in 2016 and served as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors in 2020. His specialty is attracting young people to live and work in the city. We hope to see that here in Erie. Pittsburgh's Bill Peduto was a champion of the economy from 2014 and through 2022, taking the tech, medical, and green industries to new heights. I did some research. I did this research months ago and I was talking to one of the mayoral candidates, and I think if she is successful tomorrow, we're going to have this embroidered and hung in her office. It's a quote from Lyndon Johnson. He said, "When the burdens of the presidency seem unusually heavy, I always remind myself it could be worse. I could be a mayor." So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the three mayors and Ben Spegan back up to the stage. Thank you very much for having us here tonight.
And how about a round of applause for Mark Dombrowski, a real gem in Erie, Pennsylvania? We are lucky to have him. I want to pick up right there, mayors. A president, a U.S. president, said, "It could be worse. I could be mayor." Each one of the three of you ran. What was your why? Why did you want to be mayors of your city? Mayor Fisher, let's start with you.
Well, thanks to JS, and thanks for everybody for being here tonight, and Ben for putting together a great agenda for us over this past month. I think, to be a good mayor, you got to feel it in your bones, in your heart, in your soul, and you've got to be interested in the most important asset of your city, and that's the people. I'm a business guy, and almost went bankrupt a couple different times, but had some success, and I was interested in building high-performance organizations, which means you train people a lot, high profit sharing, high employee satisfaction, high customer satisfaction. And to see the transformation stories that came out of that from the people that I worked with that had relatively modest expectations for themselves. I'm just going to go to work and I don't really expect to get anything out of it, to seeing themselves transformed. I received a letter from one person that said, when I came to work here, you told me if I committed myself to this organization, it could change my life. And I said, yeah, I've heard that before. But she said, I can say now I've been here 4 years and it's transformed me. I have wings and I can fly. You've got to understand I came from a house where my dad beat me if I came home with good grades because he never got good grades in school. And now I value myself and believe I can do anything, and my two daughters are going to college. That feeling that I had there really translated into public service. And because I think the purpose of a business is to serve as a platform for human potential to flourish. And that story is just one of those stories that I just said, boy, there's nothing that feels better than that, maybe than being a dad or a grandfather. And so I said, could we do that at scale? Because a good mayor uses the city as a platform for human potential to flourish. So that was my driving to see if we could have more people realize their dreams about themselves, sometimes dreams they didn't even know they had.
Mayor Peduto, the early mornings, the late nights, the deluge of challenges coming in, why did you want to be mayor?
Well, you make it sound so great. I mean, I think all three of us would say that's
right?
exactly why that we did it. I mean, you love that your brain is wired to want to constantly be doing things. And being the mayor is like having a cable TV with 700 stations that is constantly going. And 1 minute you're dealing with combined sewer overflow waste, and the next you're dealing with bond issues.
And so it's picture in picture while all of that's happening.
Yeah, and no matter what's on your agenda for that day, it won't be the most important thing you deal with. And it's really, I think, a job like no other. My history goes back, I come from a dysfunctional family. My dad was a Republican and my mom a Democrat. And there was no real politics. I mean, there was never a yard sign in the yard. They never attended a fundraiser, but they voted every year. And my grandfather came over in 1921, and he voted every year. He helped to form the steel workers at his union, and he was proud to be a Democrat. And the only people in my family that ever worked in government was my brother David, who retired lieutenant colonel in the Army, and my uncle Marino, who was a state trooper. And there was no path to politics or government, but it fascinated me. And I didn't even know how to get in. But it was through the work that I did and a lot of volunteering in college that I found my true passion was my city. And being at Penn State in the 80s, I often tell the story. 1979, I started high school. The Pirates won the World Series. It's been a long time. The Steelers won their 4th Super Bowl, and Pittsburgh died. We died. The economic heart was ripped out of us. I watched my brothers all have to leave. I watched my friends that I grew up with in high school have absolutely no desire ever to go back to Pittsburgh. And there was something that was compelling me saying, do it. And in the 90s, there was this weird group of us that just decided we were going to stay because it was worth fighting for. And I began working in city council as a chief of staff. By the time that person decided he was not going to run again, I always thought of myself as the person on the other side of the camera, the person telling the candidate's wife, button the top button. And I've actually worked 2 campaigns here in the 90s for Bill Levins and Ron DiNicola. And I managed both of them. And I thought maybe that's where I'd be. But it was really the compelling part about I want to do something for my city. And that steered me into deciding I would run for city council. And I ended up serving 12 years on council. And there was never any, should I run for state treasurer? Should I wait till the congressman retires and run for Congress? No, I wanted to work in Pittsburgh, for Pittsburgh. And I took a challenge and ran against an incumbent mayor, and we won. And I had the opportunity to serve 2 terms as the mayor of Pittsburgh. And everything that you described in saying, why would you do it, was all of the things that I loved.
Mayor Barry, what was your why? Why you wanted to be mayor of Albuquerque?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us to your beautiful city. It's just a really cool place. My wife, Maria, is with us. She spent her day driving Park Isle. Is that right? That's the way you say it? She drove out on the peninsula and saw the beaches, and then she had noodles at your food hall. And so she's the real leader in the room. But the answer to the question is not why I decided, it's why we decided. So we're business people. I started as a house painter. We're contractors by trade. Both of us met at the business school at the university, and have been married and just partners our whole lives. And we had a business that we started, and we were an 11-year overnight success. We worked hard, and we got to the point where we felt like it was what you're supposed to do. It really wasn't that complicated of a decision. We saw some people, our U.S. Senator Pete Domenici and some others that we would watch, and I'd watch C-SPAN, and I just said, you know what? If that's what a public servant looks like, I think I would like to try to do that. I have no idea if we'd have any opportunity, but we just didn't come up through political machinery. We just ran. I ran for the state legislature, won that seat twice, and then was really going to go home after that. And I had some folks ask me if we would run for mayor, and we felt like we could make a difference. So the short answer to the question is, being an Eagle Scout and just growing up in scouting and learning civics and doing, hey, there's a scout crowd right here. Yeah, it's here for the Eagles. It's just, we just kind of thought that's what you're supposed to do. You're blessed, give something back. And if people let you do that, take that opportunity.
So we heard early in my welcome, and Mark Dombrowski reiterated it. Tomorrow's an election day, and in some places they might refer to that as an off year, because there's not a marquee race here in Pennsylvania. There's not a gubernatorial race. There's not a federal level race. Sadly, we see this throughout the country, local level elections. If that's what's on the ballot, voter turnout tends to be lower. Tonight's program, American Progress from the Front Lines, examining local level action, innovation, and solutions to cities' challenges in chaotic times. On the campaign trail for the first time, And then after, how did you build that rapport with voters to gain their trust that you could be their leader, and then keep their trust in that process, knowing that people don't turn out the same way for a mayoral election that they do for a presidential election? Mayor Barry, can we start with you?
Sure. We just asked for the job, and they gave it to us. And we made a promise to our community. If you give us an opportunity to serve, we will do that. If we can, as a family, look you in the eye and ask for a second term, we will do that. We don't have term limits, but we said after that, we're going to go home. Because if you're not tired of hearing me talk after 8 years, I'll be tired of hearing me talk after 8 years. And we just kind of kept that workmanlike attitude through the process. I was the first Republican mayor in 30 years in a very, very blue place. And people ask, well, why would that be? And I think it really just came down to people. There's a wisdom. People are wise, and they know, I think, in general, you may or may not agree who got elected to one office or another. Maybe you voted the other way, but I think we all have to agree there's a collective wisdom in this. And so we just literally just tried to humbly go about the work and do the work. And then I think we tried to talk to people about, and I mentioned it earlier today, you know, if you don't like what you're getting, don't ever forget you get what you incentivize. You, us, all of us as citizens, we get what we incentivize. And you can incentivize with your vote. You can incentivize with your voice to people who are already in office. And if you are in the business of rewarding the people who serve you. Electeds work for you. And so if they have a servant's heart and you feel like that's the case, whether you agree with them 100% of the time, that's great. But we just ask people, you're not going to like everything we do, but just know that we're going about it in a way that we feel is the right thing to do. And folks did. So we're very blessed to get a chance to do it.
Mayor Peduto, you challenged an incumbent, and you had to convince voters to take a chance on you, your vision, your leadership. The importance of that in that message, gaining their trust, keeping their trust. How did you do it?
We built a coalition. So it began 8 years prior, and I got elected to city council in 2001. And after my first term, I decided to run for mayor and city council, both. And we had a lot of fun with it. You know, don't think twice, just vote twice. And it would be like the mailers would have the same picture of me twice and in the district. And I was told by an old political warhorse, you're an idiot. You're not even going to get 10% of the mayor's race, and you're going to lose your seat. And because Pittsburgh went through Act 47, financial distress, where we voted to have the state come in and take over our finances, I led the charge on that. So I lost the support of the unions. I lost the support of the newspapers. I lost the support of other elected officials. So I was running for my council seat without any of the standard people who make council members and mayors. I ended up finishing second in the mayor's race, although we only spent a couple $100,000. We didn't able to raise that much. Getting 1 out of every 4 votes and winning 38 out of the 41 precincts in my reelection for city council. What ended up happening is the person who won tragically passed away 9 months into his term. And because we were so divided over Act 47, we thought it was a good idea that we made the 23-year-old member of council the president because he'd be harmless. And he became the mayor. And no fault of his own, but he didn't have anyone. So all the worst people that were part of the Santorum regime, and I won't go through all the other names, but you know what I mean, the political establishment, the folks that look at city government as an ATM, they gravitated towards him, and they built what has been called the network, the people who write the checks, who get the contracts, the work on the bond issue, and all these things that don't get reported in the papers. And so we started a movement from that 2005 campaign to reform Pittsburgh. And we created a group called Reform Pittsburgh Now. And we had 10 theses that we taped to my door of my city council office of things it would do, like end no bid contracts, be able to assure that there were campaign limits in the city of Pittsburgh for financial contributions, lobbyist disclosure and lobbyist registration. We passed the most comprehensive series of bills of government reform in the city's history. And from that, we got different people involved, artists, people from the faith community, neighborhood community leaders, and the people who weren't sitting at that table. And that's where we built the coalition to run in 2013. And with that coalition, with pressure, the federal government started looking at what was happening in the city-county building. And grand juries were put together. The police chief was arrested, and the mayor dropped out of the race. So they had to scramble, and they had to find somebody. And the person they found was somebody who I actually had worked for, our former Auditor General, Jack Wagner, Vietnam War veteran, Purple Heart recipient, former city council president, Auditor General, state senator. And they just poured all the money they could into his race in order to defeat us. And we won by 11 points. And it was because of the work being done 8 years prior of that campaign that thought I had no chance to win, that we were able to start to pull those people together and to build a whole new coalition within the city of Pittsburgh that really cared about seeing not managed decline, but for the first time seeing growth.
Mayor Fisher, same question to you of how do you gain the trust of the voters on the way in? How do you keep the trust of the voters while you're in office?
You know, trust comes out of relationships, obviously, so that means you got to show up. A mayor, when you're from a strong mayor form of government, which you all have here, Pittsburgh had, Louisville has, I'm not sure what Albuquerque has, they have as well. You know, you're the chief executive, you run all operations, you could be working 24 hours a day because there is always something going on in a city. So there's unlimited opportunity to show up and be present, start dialogue, follow up, which then leads to trust, right? And it was important to me that our campaign and my administration looked like all the faces of Louisville. All of our demographics, white, black, brown, foreign-born, native-born, et cetera. And I was really the first person that really had that kind of emphasis. And so it created an energy of a city that was on the move, and people that weren't typically involved were involved for the first time. I was an outsider. I had not run for political office before at the local level. I started by running for the United States Senate and then was not successful in that race, but it lit my fire for public service. So when you get together new groups of people that feel like they can make a difference, there's an energy to that that is palpable. In my first race, I ran against the city council president and a few other folks that were supposed to win, and I won easily, and then won the general election as well. And then 3 4-year terms was term limited after that. But it's about continuing to show up once you have the office as well. The thing about being mayor is that everybody feels like they are your neighbor because you become very visible. And so they share with you what neighbors want to share, what's working well, what's not working well. It is a constant opportunity to follow up and show that you respect people and that you provide dignity to them. And that's all people want to feel. They don't expect you to be perfect, but they expect for you to try and to elevate the conditions. And, you know, we would have big lofty plans that we would execute against. But I think that reservoir of goodwill we had, one of the 3 values I had that would leave our administration was the value of compassion, meaning respect for all of our citizens so their full human potential was flourishing. And they could see that in the programs that we rolled out that had hard measures to them, not just, you know, feel-good social worker kind of measures. As I say, a good mayor has to have the head of a chief executive officer and the heart of a social worker. You know, so it's about lifting everybody up and getting hard results that can make people's lives better.
So a big part of tonight's conversation are identifying the challenges and the solutions. So I want to start with the challenges. Not any of you after office has ridden off into the sunset or been quiet. You continue to network with current mayors, other former mayors. Right now, we're looking at local innovation, but yet the challenges that cities face in light of, as we say with tonight's title, chaotic times. Mayor Peduto, I want to start with you on what you see as the most pressing challenge facing mayors at large, what you think is most important that they're facing today when it comes to big challenges.
Oh, it's difficult to pick one. We're living in chaotic times, and so things that we would have just considered standard, like transportation bills or HUD funding or food benefits for our residents, are things that you can't count on anymore. So it's really trying to manage when the rules of engagement of how the relationship between a federal government in relationship to local government exists. The number of times that cities are mentioned in the Constitution is 0. Cities are the function of states, but yet cities in many cases have direct relationships not only with Washington, but many times with the White House itself. All of us have had initiatives that were started in conversations that have happened with whoever was occupying the White House at that time. And without the set of certainty, cities are left to really not so much exist on their own, but really have to find new ways to create partnerships. One thing we worked on for basically 7 years was how do we get our large nonprofits to pay their fair share? You know, we're a city that it prides itself with our eds and meds, but 40% of our lands aren't taxable. And so instead of just getting a pilot, we started to work on how can we share mission. And if we do share mission and we start to understand that UPMC wants to create affordable housing near the hospitals in order to be able to have their workers have the option to walk to work, and we can get the land that we have and utilize some developers in order to be able to sort of create a model that Philadelphia did with the University of Pennsylvania. We can also create more housing for the people who want to stay in that neighborhood. And we started working with Carnegie Mellon on after-school programming and giving our kids the opportunity to have world-class education in coding. And we finally came to an agreement when we called 1PGH that the money would not go to the city, but it would go to a new 501c3 called 1PGH. And the University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University, Allegheny Health Network, and UPMC committed $120 million over 5 years to help fund almost 40 different initiatives that would go outside the realm of patching potholes and public safety. Yes, it would go to enhancing our parks. Yes, it would go to a number of programs that were desperately needed. And unfortunately now, because we always had that safety net of where the federal government was, that certainty isn't there. So the next mayor, as he tries to negotiate a deal with the big four, will have to do so in a way to figure out how to buy ambulances. We'll have to do so in a way to be able to figure out how to maintain and keep our streets and our bridges in good repair. And that luxury that we had won't be there for him.
Mayor Peduto, you mentioned the relationship between cities and states. And so, Mayor Barry, I want to go to you for a second because you've had the experience of being on both sides. You're a former state legislature as well. And preemption's often a challenge for cities where state laws are prohibiting cities from taking certain actions, regulations. So you saw that as a legislator, then you saw that as a mayor. Speak to the challenges that cities face when working with the states they're in, their state governments.
Sure. When I was in the legislature, I was part of a caucus, and we were in a caucus because we had like-minded ideas. As a Republican, mine were, and by the way, let's just start off with Democrats can balance checkbooks and Republicans can help the homeless. We get told so often that you got to be on brand. Mayors don't get to do that. We don't get to vote our conscience. We get to work with our communities. But in the legislature, I didn't have to make things work. I just had to vote to tell folks what to do. That included the teachers. If we wanted to teach New Mexico history on top of everything else you're teaching, shazam, there you go. We want you teaching history. So we had the best intentions, but we sometimes overburdened people because we were preempting what they would normally do. And that's what legislatures do, okay? I'm not saying that's out of line. But what has become popular today is that cities are being preempted by state legislatures and the federal government sometimes from doing the things that they feel is best for their community. And I've really developed this belief over time that cities, even though, as Mayor Peduto said, we're a political subdivision. Yet 85% of all the GDP in this country comes from cities. I grew up in rural Nebraska around farming and ranching. If you had a brain tumor, you go to Omaha. But nobody wanted the Emerald City to get stuff because we were rural folk. And so this idea of preemption, really, to me, I talk to my friends in the legislature about this now. It's like, listen, cities should be allowed to be who they and their citizens want to be. And then let people vote with their feet in a way. If Erie's doing something that you like, not artificially to be a political bastion for one way or the other, but if Erie's doing interesting things to you, why shouldn't Erie be allowed to do those interesting things? And if you don't like that, you don't have to live here. But if you want to move someplace that's doing things more to your liking, and it could be just pedestrian things. It could be streets and roads and landscaping. It could be all the things that we take for granted. It could be picking up the garbage, but it could also be the visionary type things. When states tell cities, you can't do that. And it happens in blue states and it happens in red states. Blue cities and red states get told to do. Austin gets told to do all the time from the Texas legislature what to do. And it's more of a proclivity towards the conservative, and Austin would tell you that they become great because they are more artistically oriented. They want to be moral, more progressive. You have the same thing happen in blue states. You have Orange County, California that wants to do interesting things, but the Democrat legislature preempts that. So that's a challenge. So the two big challenges for cities, that's a long way of saying the two big challenges for cities is a collective challenge for all of us, and that's to fight off those who wish to divide us, and who, by the way, make a lot of money doing that. If you don't believe it, just turn on any cable channel you want. You can get your opinion just spoken right back to you. And the second thing is we're losing more and more flexibility in cities to be who we want to be as a city and to create our own identity. And I don't know the solution to that other than educating our legislators to maybe give us a little bit of rope. And they will. They think you're going to hang yourself with it.
Mayor Fisher, I'd welcome you to talk about the challenges, but I want to pick up on a word that Mayor Peduto used as well. I'm leaning in on the really chaotic times. We're living in chaotic times, and perhaps we could use another C word, cruel times. There's cruelty out there, there's chaos out there, and yet you led a city of compassion. And so I wanted to ask you about the role of compassion for you as a leader, how you got that buy-in from your residents, your city, and how you used that to lead Louisville.
So again, I have a business background. Great businesses run on consistent sets of values. So I said, when I become mayor, we're going to make decisions for the city, big decisions through three values. One is a city of lifelong learning. Any city that you see on the move is a curious city, entrepreneurial city. Second was a healthy city. By that I meant physical health, mental health, environmental health, spiritual health. And the third was I was looking for a word that connoted we're all in this together. We're interdependent. And so that's where compassion came from. We're a city of compassion. It's where we strive to release human flourishing. And we respect people, that we want their human flourishing to be individual and actionable. So compassion is an action word. It turns out it's harder for a lot of people to be compassionate than it is to be a cynic from the couch, talking about the way things should be, as opposed to getting in the game and really trying to make a difference for themselves, their family, and for other people. And you have a powerful pulpit as a mayor. You've got a secular pulpit that you can preach from every day. So if you went to Louisville, you'd hear people talking about compassion. Yes, in service work, but also in economic development, in public health, in education, to close the gaps that exist in a city that usually are gaps that have been there for generations. That's no way to have a winning team. You can't have some people doing real well and other people really struggling. And of course, this is a big problem in America right now, where you have huge concentrations of wealth and income at the top, getting bigger and bigger, and more poverty at the lower levels of our country as well. So this is, kind of at historically challenging standards right now. Is this who we want to be as a country? Is this who we want to be as a city? Capitalism is out of balance right now. Capitalism was good for me, but when it's out of balance, just like when we're out of balance, you get sick. And when a city gets sick, you start seeing people kind of turn on each other. We see this nationally right now, right? And so bad leaders, in my mind, use those conditions to divide people so that they can gain power to do whatever they want to do. In my mind, good leaders identify differences, figure out ways to pull people together, unify us so we're stronger as a whole entity, as opposed to one half of the room fighting the other half of the room.
Yeah.
So just to close, and then as mayor, it's like some people always said, well, I was called earlier a philosopher king as a mayor, Well, others would say, look, your job's just to pick up the trash, man. Don't talk about all this high-minded stuff. But I think it's important for people to aspire to something bigger than themselves. We have to do that as our nation if we want the best for each and every one of us, so that we hold on to that idea while we work through the nitty-gritty of the day in, the day out. And that is the beauty of a mayor's job. You can have a city run smoothly, but have a big picture vision that everybody can be excited about and transform their lives in the process.
And I think we see that payoff when we see a clear vision, a clear future, a way to be more forward-looking than perhaps spending too much time looking in our rearview mirror. Mayor Peduto, I want to go back to you because you mentioned 1979, 79 to 80, the bottoming out of Pittsburgh's economy. You mentioned Act 47, the city declares bankruptcy. Yet Pittsburgh consistently now is on top 10 lists. Innovative city, city of destination. How did you get residents to stop staring in the rearview mirror, not forget their past, where they came from, but spend more time looking at the road ahead of them and what they could be so that they could actualize it? As mayor, how did you get them looking forward?
2 words: bike lanes. I'm joking.
Can you say that louder for the people in the back?
No, I get so much hell for bike lanes. My moniker is Bike Lane Billy. And I always say I take it as a source of pride. If that's the most controversial thing that we did, then okay. But there was something about that. It was, the bike lanes were not, well, they were to be able to have multimodal transportation available for people in the city, especially when 25% of the people who live in Pittsburgh don't own an automobile. But it was also a way of saying, we're building a city that understands the importance of place in trying to attract talent to be a part of. So when I took office in 2001, we were dead last in the country for bike infrastructure. And by the time I left office, we were in the top 10. And it was not about the bike lanes, but it was about understanding that we had the assets. we had Carnegie Mellon, we had UPMC, we had all of this tech in this startup that was starting to take off, but city government was not being a partner in helping to create a city that would want to be able, where people would want to be able to move to. So, I mean, as controversial as it is, we were the first city in the world to ban fracking. And you can't ban fracking. It's illegal business, right? Oh, but wait, but there's a reason why they never sued us. And that's because the Philadelphia Inquirer reported that the members of council who voted for it had been put on the terrorist watch list by the Director of Homeland Security under Governor Rendell. And so we said one thing, come sue us. We're going to have discovery, and we're going to see every email that went out. That guy was fired within a week, by the way. But it was an indication that we paid our price, and we still have the scars from it. And we lived with air that was dangerous to breathe and water that was poisonous to drink, and we're not going back. And we have this new way about a way that we can lead on a global stage again in a new economy. And yeah, it's going to require some different things, like alternative modes of transportation and enhancements to our park systems. And the people of Pittsburgh joined in. They raised their own taxes to fund our libraries. They raised their own taxes to enhance our parks. And it was that constant drumbeat that we gave during our 8 years in office about the city that could be, that was able to change and turn so that our GDP grew by 40% during our time, that we were able to create a reserve fund when we had none of over $120 million, that we have our debt from over 20% higher than when New York City went bankrupt to less than 10, that we increased our pension funds from less than 50% to over 70. It was an economic development model based on people, planet, place, and performance.
Oh. As somebody who grew up just 12 miles west of the birth town in Pennsylvania of George C. Marshall, I can't help but ask you for a second just to talk about the Marshall Plan. And that was under Marshall Plan for Middle America, and that was under Trump 1.0. And you just spoke about speaking out boldly. Come sue us, and we're going to ban fracking, making a bold move to say, look, the U.S. is pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords. The U.S. as a nation's backing away, but yet mayors are banding together. You were part of the initiative that the group that called for that initiative. Could you speak to that decision to say we're still in this? We're still going to move forward with this?
It was born during a speech in London for the premiere of Michael Bloomberg's film From Paris to Pittsburgh. You might remember when President Trump pulled out, he said, I was elected to represent the people of Pittsburgh, not Paris. And I lost my mind. I was like, you lost Pittsburgh. And I said, we are going to stay in order to be able to rebuild our economy. And from that speech, at that time, it was tractor plants that were being proposed up and down the Ohio Valley through West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and 30 miles from the city of Pittsburgh. And we were just playing defense. And so there was a economist named Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University who was in the audience, and he made contact with a professor from the University of Pittsburgh, and we began to work on this idea. What if Huntington, West Virginia, Morgantown, West Virginia, Pittsburgh, Youngstown, Ohio, Dayton, Columbus, Cincinnati, Athens, and Louisville were to work together and to create a model that would create what each of those cities have: research institutions, and to create a model that looked at the green economy and the potential that it would have. So through the University of Mass Amherst, they did a study, and they said over the next 10 years, if you do nothing, you're going to lose 100,000 jobs in that region, the Ohio Valley and Northern Appalachia. 40,000 of those jobs will be lost in the state of West Virginia. But if you invest, and they came up with the amount that would have to be invested into green technologies, you can create 400,000 jobs in these areas. And I like to believe that that was the basis. We put it out before President Biden took office, and where they started to look through a different lens at climate change. And that's through the lens of workers in the communities that otherwise would be left behind.
We have excellent audience questions. Keep them coming, folks. I'm going to start working some of those in amongst some of those that I still have. But Mayor Peduto, you did say those two words, bike lanes. We've got some infrastructure questions here. So, Mayor Fisher, I want to turn to you of some examples from Louisville of public infrastructure initiatives that improved your city for your citizens and their own lives. Public infrastructure in Louisville examples that you led under your tenure as mayor that improved the city, improved things for residents.
Yeah, well, mayors are constantly, or they should be working on the built environment. So that means, transportation, obviously, but also what kind of new places can you create, whether they're innovation districts, whether it's addressing a 50-year-old problem with a state highway that's unsafe. Our Dixie Highway is one example of that, or eliminating barriers that were put in place to advance racial segregation. There's a guy named Harlan Bartholomew that did a lot of infrastructure development as a consultant to many cities over the years out of St. Louis, and one of his principles was to put large pieces of infrastructure, whether it be railroads or roads, between black populations and the downtown so that they could keep black populations away from cities. So when you go to a lot of cities, you'll see on the other side of the railroad or on the other side of the expressway, those areas were intentionally designed. And we don't live in a time where that is a winning formula. So a lot of times you end up taking down or reimagining pieces of infrastructure to make them not foreboding and threatening, but welcoming, taking 4 lanes to 2 lanes, putting retail alongside of those is something that you would do. Or how can you accentuate your distinct sense of place? We didn't really have a hospitality identity in Louisville, and I think any city that's got something going on, there's a hospitality identity. So what is uniquely yours that can be part of that identity? I looked at Napa Valley, how they had wine tourism, and I joked earlier today that 95% of the world's bourbon comes from Kentucky. The other 5% is counterfeit, and so you stay away from that. But I said we're gonna develop a bourbon and local food tourism industry, and we called it Bourbonism. That led to the development of dozens of new hotels, 4- and 5-star properties, great new places where people could come and visit and enjoy. So that was an example of kind of combining the need to intensify our sense of identity and place with infrastructure development, which then leads to advanced economic development, more conventions, et cetera.
You talked about some of the structures that were intentionally designed to segregate populations. We've got a couple of questions here about redlining as well, financial segregating of communities and locking certain people out. Mayor Fisher, can I ask you to speak about Louisville's experience with that and building an economy for all, an inclusive economy when it comes to including residents from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all people in Louisville?
Yeah, well, one of the first things we did was explain what redlining is. A lot of people understandably don't understand the history of their cities. So like when you drive through a certain part of town and you see significant buildings that you think should be there, but they're not there, and it just doesn't seem right. It's like, I wonder what that's about. So when you put together redlining with urban renewal, it explains a lot of the built environment of many of the distressed areas of the cities of America. And so it's like, that didn't work out so well. And they usually have high areas of low income folks that live there. So how do you bring those areas back into have the opportunity to thrive in certain ways? So redlining, I conducted a study, or asked the University of Louisville to conduct a study on redlining so we could explain it to the city. And the same thing with urban renewal. So that when we started identifying where we needed to invest, people understood what the conditions were and the decisions that were made by people that came before us that led to these positions of inequity, if you will, bad decisions that need to be corrected if everyone has a chance to succeed and a chance to win. One of the most important things, as we know, in building wealth is home ownership. And there's a lot of folks that don't have any type of generational wealth because their ancestors never had the opportunity to build any kind of wealth or own a house. It's racially disproportionate on our black populations for historical reasons, obviously. And you can either say, well, that was then, I don't have anything to do with that. Or you can work to say, again, we're not going to be a world-class team if everybody's not winning. So one of the easiest things you can do as a city is have a homeowner down payment assistance program where people that are paying their rent, no problem, they just can't come up with the 25% for the down payment. But a city can, or private foundations can come together to where you turn these people from renters into homeowners, and then boom, you launch transformational, multi-generational wealth with that. You do that with, let's say, free college programs, then all of a sudden you can disrupt poverty in the course of 10 years of a family's life. And disrupting poverty is one of the number one jobs of a mayor because most of the challenge that comes through a mayor's office are poverty related.
I want to pick up on that, but I want to go to yes, clapping to that. Thank you, Art, in the front row. I would join you in that if I wasn't holding a microphone and index cards. But Mayor Barry, I want to come to you because Mayor Fisher brought up homes and home ownership, and the work you've done in Albuquerque has been innovative when dealing with a challenge and a crisis facing many cities nationwide and those experiencing homelessness. Can you talk about the vision for your program, your initiative, and the effect that you saw it have under your administration?
Sure. Let me just kind of go talk to folks a little bit about, hanging around mayors for a while. Like anybody else, you hang around people in your industry and you kind of get this notion of who you think's good at it and who's not, right? These two guys are good at it, I can tell you that. I knew them. But I've kind of come to this mindset of mayors. It's dangerous to oversimplify, but there's really two kind of mayors that I can identify. There's show horses and work horses. And going to this idea of the homeless and on transportation as well, most of the mayors that I gravitated to that we end up years out of office still enjoying having these conversations with people that are building communities are people that were somewhat off-brand. They were workhorses. They always say a good mayor can never win a primary in the congressional election after that because you have to do things that aren't necessarily fit in the pigeonhole of your party platforms because you got to work for your whole city. Housing's one, homelessness is one, transportation's one. We built the first gold-rated bus rapid transit system in America. Republicans, some of them were outraged because I, as a Republican, would build transit. Democrats were some outraged because I, as a Republican, would build transit. But yet it's doing what they said it would do. It's transit-oriented development. It's helping people that are on the lower scale of incomes. Everybody on our transit corridor, and this goes to the homelessness initiatives as well. 30% of our employment is on, Euclid Avenue in Cleveland, if you will. Or whatever your main street is. Our hospitals and our universities are on this. Well, not everybody that works at a hospital and a university is making big bucks. A lot of them work in the service industries, and so we gave them an opportunity to get to and from work. Our big opposition was the incumbents, the wealthier property owners up and down the line, people that had been there for years, homeowners associations, people that didn't want it. But it's doing now, 8 years later, what they said it would do. So we just took this approach that, listen, let's just do what's right. Forget about, mayors are not supposed to be nonpartisan. Homelessness was one of those things. I did not run on that. My wife and I are contractors. We build things. As I said, I started off as a house painter, and we got into office. and I went to Los Angeles, and somebody was kind enough to take me to Skid Row, the Nickel, Fifth Street. And I started looking at what Los Angeles was doing with their Project 50, which they took 50 people in their community that were costing the most to the community, suffering the most, the $1 million Murrays, people that they weren't helping, that were costing the taxpayers a lot of money at the same time. And I became really passionate about this idea of making that a hallmark of our administration. And so what I did is I reached out to the community and I said, look, I am not an expert, but there are people here that are. My job is to enable you and give you agency to come in and help us figure this out. We developed a program called Albuquerque Heading Home. It's been replicated all over the country now. I still travel the country talking about it. A lot of it has been unwound in our city after the transition, unfortunately, and our homeless population has gone up. But we were able to cut the homeless population by 50% our first year and a half. And then we were able to get veterans to functional zero. Some of the segments, there's all these different segments, chronic homelessness, unsheltered homelessness. Some of the categories we're able to reduce as much as 80%. And that's what I tell people all the time is expect your mayors to do things that maybe aren't on brand, because sometimes the people that are converts to that belief system in Me for Homelessness can actually be some of your best advocates. But the real work in our city was done. Yes, it was under my leadership and our administration's leadership, but I had a whole bunch of directors. We had our solid waste department involved. We gave jobs to people that were homeless to help them have the dignity of work. We did a TED Talk on that. It's had almost, 2 million views now, just talking about dignity in people in our community. And people now come up and ask me, especially in our community, what's the one thing we can do to solve this? And the answer is there is no one thing you can do. It's like, to use a really dumb football analogy, every team's got 11 players, every team's got blockers and tacklers and the quarterback. Some teams are good at it, some teams aren't. Yes. So build a team of people in your community that are good at what you want to do. Give them agency, give them resources, build them up, and then get your community behind you. Invite your community to go with you underneath the overpass and meet people where they are. Invite your media to come out and go to tent cities or go to things that people have mixed emotions on, and make the bigger decisions based on what is right. Stop looking at homelessness like it's only a problem for the people that have to step over the person on the street. Start thinking about the person on the sidewalk. Start thinking about them. Start thinking about someone who maybe never in their life has had anybody tell them they're worth anything. Reach out to them, invite them as a citizen and a leader in your community to help lead. We will invest in you. Would you invest in yourself? Let us solve this together. You'd be amazed at how many people will do that.
Mayor Barry, I think you've answered this question with that, but if you want to expound on it, I'd welcome a chance to come back to you. But Mayor Fisher, I'll start with you, and Mayor Peduto, I'll go to you. Pointing out the obvious, we're four white guys sitting here, and somebody in the audience is asking what the biggest challenges have been leading diverse populations. I've not done that, so I'm turning to the three of you to answer that, what that's been like, the challenges you faced, how to get that buy-in. Mayor Barry, the reason I said I think you might have answered that was meet people where they are, go to the places and be with them. But Mayor Fisher, the challenges that you experienced when trying to lead a diverse population, what was that like? What experiences did you have?
Well, I think the only way that you can do it is to immerse yourself in that experience. It's like the analogy of a fishbowl. When you look at it from the outside, it looks interesting. You put your hand in it, it feels a little different. But when you dive in the fishbowl and you swim around, you get a whole different perspective about what's going on. And so whether it's getting to know your foreign-born population, we had a lot of refugee resettlement in our city. I made globalization a major priority. It's understanding the different ethnic differences between populations. In our Black community, it's really trying to unlearn as much as you can as a white guy to say, what's the history? What are the challenges? Look at the data. It informs you that whatever system's in place here, it ain't working. So we've got to disrupt this with some type of new systems as well, and have all the people at your table, and have the leadership of your administration look like the community as well. Because as much as you like to think as a white guy I can hang with my brothers in the black community, I can for the most part, but when things get really difficult and really tense, I just haven't lived that. But you need to have people around you that can say, we need to keep these issues in mind. So it comes down to, I was fortunate to be raised in a family where my father's main value was we treat everybody the same. Nobody's better than anybody else. Whether it's Sam the shoeshine man or the president of IBM, everybody's the same. And my mom would just always say, if you can do something to help somebody, do it. Don't ask what's in it for you. And as simple as those two values are, that's how we ran our administration. And I think it speaks to what we all want as people. People want to be respected. They want to be treated as dignity. It doesn't matter what they look like, but I've just always had kind of a soft spot for the underdogs, because for whatever reason, they're in that spot. They don't want to be in that spot. And it's not fair, in my view, that somebody that's born into a certain situation, has to bear an undue burden and have their life potential really cut short a little bit. I saw, as mayor, talent everywhere, but not opportunity everywhere. And I felt like our job as administration was to create those opportunities so people could walk through that door.
Mayor Peduto, to you in Pittsburgh, diverse neighborhoods, getting that buy-in, working with them. What was that like for you, the challenges you faced?
Well, we were able, in the course of 10 years, to increase our Latino population by 34% and our Asian population by 35%. So it was a very, very large increase because we had so very few people. From 1970s until just this past 10 years, nobody came to Pittsburgh. There were no jobs. The reason that I live in Pittsburgh is because my grandfather came there to work in Columbia Steel. And so what I would say is one of the big things, at least for a personal perspective, is grounding yourself in history. In 1850, Joe Barker, who was a street preacher, was arrested for threatening to kill the bishop. And while he was in prison, a group of Pittsburghers decided he'd make a great mayor. So they ran him on a write-in campaign, and the name of the party was not too subtle. It was the Anti-Catholic Party, and he won. And they actually went down to jail, broke him out, took him to the city county building, and the judge said, no, you have to go back to jail. And so he got sworn in, and the governor's pardon hadn't arrived. So as the mayor of Pittsburgh, he spent his first night in prison. One of his first acts was he fired all the police officers and replaced them with his friends, which caused a civil war in the streets of Pittsburgh. He imprisoned the bishop for an illegal sewer tap-in at Mercy Hospital. And while the bishop was in prison, the Catholic cathedral was burned to the ground. On a personal note, my grandfather came over in 1921 and ended up settling in Carnegie, Pennsylvania. And in 1923, 10,000 members of the Ku Klux Klan came to visit because there were too many Southern and Eastern European immigrants coming to Carnegie, which was a white Protestant town. And because of the number of Catholics and Jews, they burned a 70-foot cross in a park that I grew up about 4 blocks from. And they marched down into Carnegie, and they decided they were going to burn another cross at St. Luke's Church, which was Irish Catholic. At that time, a lot of Italian and Ukrainian and Poles were moving into Carnegie to work in the mills. And they had to cross a 2-lane bridge to get there. And my grandfather and others stopped them on the bridge with lead pipes, baseball bats, picket fences. And one person who was never identified from the church tower shot and killed one of the Klan member leaders. And so they retreated. But it was 1 year later that U.S. Congress passed the Immigration Act of 1924, which meant it would be another 3.5 years before my grandmother could come over. We live in interesting times, but grounding yourself in history allows you that you can make a difference in being able to create within your own community a more welcoming society. And when you think that this is the only time this has happened, I'm sure that if you go back into the history of Erie, you'll find the same thing. And so many, what breaks my heart, of the kids that I grew up with in Chartiers Valley, and as you know, in Western Pennsylvania, if you grew up in a valley, that meant you grew up in a mill town. So many of them whose parents and grandparents came over are now the ones that are the loudest calling for deportation.
How do we have that conversation now? None of you are currently elected, but we're seeing in our cities ICE deployed by the federal government. We're seeing the National Guard set in by the federal government. What sort of advice message do you give to current elected mayors? What sort of guidance do you give to residents and citizens in cities, knowing that history may not repeat itself, but it certainly echoes? And what I hear from your story is we're echoing right now. And in a place like Erie, in the city, the growing population, the demographic is new Americans. Otherwise, we're seeing population leave the city, but we're seeing that grow. What sort of message do you have for mayors now as we're seeing the federal government deploying troops into cities, whether be it National Guard or be it ICE? And I'll let any one of the three of you take that. What sort of advice do you give mayors now?
Well, we lived it during 2016, 2017, 2018, and what we did is the chief of police and myself, both of us, would go into the community with a translator, and we would make it as abundantly clear as we possibly could that anytime you need help, call 911. That our officers are not there to be federal agents, that they are there to protect and serve anybody, even suburbanites, who are in our city's borders, and that our medical providers will be there to provide medical attention if needed, and our firefighters will be there to be able to deal with any type of an emergency, and that you should not hesitate and you should not ever fear the men and women of public safety in the city of Pittsburgh. And I went one step further. I removed the American flag from all of our police vehicles and replaced it with the city of Pittsburgh's flag so that they wouldn't have to live in fear.
Mayor Barry.
You know, interesting times, right? For sure. And I think Mayor Peduto made a really good point. You have to, I think, gauge things through history. We're always prone in our families, if tragedy happens in our family or something really good happens in our family or in our communities and things that we agree with or disagree with in our nation, to think that this is the first time something ever happened that was like that. But as I've studied, and I'm a, self-professed B student, I'm not ever been the smartest guy in the room, but it's interesting on the National Guard situation in New Mexico. We've had a real spike in crime in the last several years. We had 30 murders in 2014. We had 120 plus a couple of years ago. And what I'm seeing is, it got so bad in our city that our Democrat governor sent the National Guard into Albuquerque, not the president of the United States. And I think that offers me some perspective on, when things, what's our job? What's our job as leaders? What's our job as elected officials? And a job, and maybe the number one job, is to allow you as the community to live your lives. And you can't do that if you're not safe. For those who are old enough, my age, you remember, New York City back in the 80s. It was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. And at some point, the citizenry of New York decided to elect people that would help with that. And I think what you're seeing, regardless of who's president today or who's governor today or who's mayor today, is, personally, I think most people I talk to on either side of the aisle, progressives to conservatives, just people I meet at Home Depot or whatever, they don't feel safe enough in the communities. They want something done. And whether we like the way it's going or how it's going, and I'm not here to be an apologist for anybody. I'm just saying, I think in our place, it got so bad that our Democrat governor sent in the National Guard. And I think my advice to mayors would be, I worked with the Obama administration closely with Janet Napolitano to make sure that we could try to work to get criminal folks off the streets. One of the ways we did that was to be an immigrant-friendly place, but a criminal-unfriendly place. So we were able to match those lines where if you got arrested for a serious crime in our city, you went through this process where ICE was involved. If you were an immigrant in our city and you were being targeted for predatory behavior, we protected you like you were our brother and sister, because we are also an immigrant city. Our city is growing with immigrants, and it's a big part of New Mexico. I mean, just read the history. So we have kind of this balance between being immigrant friendly, understanding the value of that. I grew up around first generation Polish, Czech, farmers, but understanding that without a safe place, people aren't going to be satisfied. They're not satisfied today. So things are happening. And, I'm not even sure I'm giving you the answer other than to say it's been interesting for me to watch. It's when things start getting safer, things are going to calm down a lot. And then as the elector, as the people that elect folks, it's your decision. It's our decision to decide which mayor do you want. Giuliani was elected because crime was out of control. Bloomberg did things, stop and frisk. Republican, Democrat, Independent. Talked to Mayor Nutter, the mayor of Philadelphia. They had stop and frisk. Those are things today that a lot of people look at and they shudder at, but things are done because people are trying to make the place safer. So I guess the question is, it's up to folks to put people in office to do what they need to do, but I don't think it's necessarily a one party thing as much as is being made out today. I know a lot of Democrats that are fighting hard to get the streets back as much as Republicans are.
Well, I think the question is, how do you do that, right? You've got to be for something. If you come across as just against everything, it's like, wait a minute, there's got to be another side to that. So you've got to be for safety. And if you ask any mayor, would you like some additional resources to help make your city safer? I don't know if any mayor would say no to that. So, but then the mayor would say, okay, here's how we would like that help to come, versus being big-footed, by the federal government or the state government, because they don't know the peculiarities of your city. And so it could be that you need to concentrate your police force, let's say, in certain neighborhoods and deploy the National Guard to different points of your city where they're really not in the line of fire, so to speak, but they're allowing other police officers to come in and exercise their local knowledge in a better way. And these decisions don't exist in a vacuum, right? I mean, you're seeing ICE come into cities. You're seeing educational institutions defunded, and in terms of the research that we have as a country, you're seeing all types of attacks on what we identify with as Americans. So there's a political battle going on right now. So my point is, it's just not, you can't relate it just to ICE. It's what's going on with the broader system in our country right now, and how are we evolving, and do we agree with what's going on? Or are we sleepwalking through this right now? So this is, yes, we have been here historically, but this is our time.
Yeah.
And so much of what an individual has to answer is, when the destiny of history is knocking at your door, do you even hear the knock? Do you open the door? Do you double bolt lock the door? And how do you exercise what your role in is this? Louis Brandeis, the Supreme Court Justice, was from Louisville, and he would always talk about the most important public office in the land. And do you know what that was? Not mayor, not president, the office of the citizen. So think about how far we have strayed from that, of people looking at themselves as that essential cog in this experiment that we call democracy in America. And it should call to us about how valuable that is and how rare it is and what that means for us as citizens to rise to the challenges of this day or any day and to be heard and be involved.
Role of citizen back to role of mayor. There are a lot of questions, and we're nearly up against the clock, but we have a little bit more time. There are a lot of questions here asking about future of work, the role of a mayor in leading economic development, the role of a mayor in creating family-sustaining jobs, the role of the mayor in. Welcome you to touch on any of those. Several questions up here talking about something that is finding its way into a lot of discussions we're having, not just this year, but in years past, artificial intelligence and how you see that potentially affecting workforce, how you see that affecting your residents. And we've talked about some educational initiatives, but the impact of AI on your cities, on your workforces, where do you see the future headed with that?
Technology advances are always feared for displacing jobs. So far, they've created more jobs than they have displaced. I'm sure many of you all will remember when computers came in, and what was it going to do to our work week? Take it from 5 days to 4 days. Well, that didn't quite work out, did it? But there is a lot of fear about AI. The question is, what is AI for good? I think for a city and for a mayor, it really ties into what the identity is of your city. And one of the things we've heard throughout the day here in Pittsburgh is, what is your identity as a city? Does everybody say, here's our top 3 areas of economic advantage, global advantage that we're going to invest in, that we're going to develop our workforce continuum around, from high schools through your junior colleges or community colleges, 4-year degrees. AI is part of that. So we're going to be the best in the world at these areas. If you do that, you're going to control your own destiny and you're going to create your own future. If you're like, here's AI coming, and you're reactive, well, then you're going to get rolled over, especially in the administrative jobs, especially in jobs that are disproportionately held by women. And that's no way to win a Super Bowl. So it's like anything. We got to be very proactive against this. I think a lot of this is going to be, Bill and I were talking about this earlier. I mean, it's far-reaching. It's just not the job that's going to be the cost of electricity and the energy hogs that are involved with the AI area, because these data centers, citizens, in my view, should not disproportionately be negatively impacted by that. So it's important that business pays its way as it goes around creating these new technologies. But in the end, you got to get in the game, be proactive, and create something out of it.
Mayor Peduto, future of work, Pittsburgh, AI. What lessons do you have for us here?
I get to talk to some really smart people about what their thoughts are on it. And to be honest, it's above my pay grade. I look at it through the lens of how it could be detrimental in the sense that I honestly believe that algorithms used for social media have divided us and polarized our country and other countries around the world. And AI would be like putting that on steroids. So what I get concerned about is, as somebody who likes my air and my water, in southwestern Pennsylvania, the energy companies are pursuing this all out. And I've seen this before where preemption laws are being considered in Harrisburg. There's a House Bill 502 right now that would take away your right and your community's right for zoning. And it would be decided by 9 people appointed by the governor where the data center will go, but it also would include any ancillary industry, meaning that the gas facility to power it could be placed anywhere in the state by these 9 people. I told a friend of mine who said, well, it could be working to creates more solar opportunities. And I said that, whenever somebody asks for preemption of local government, it's because they're powerful enough to ask. Bakeries don't ask for preemption laws so that they can have bakeries anywhere they want in the state. But big companies do. So I think we need to take a breath and figure out the costs that will be incumbent upon this. And I don't mean just financial. We're going to be building these energy facilities that will use more than a city in the state of Pennsylvania. Shouldn't they be told that they have to build it themselves and not put it into the grid and that we have to pay for it? We're not getting the profits from it. And if we're going to be utilizing water, shouldn't it be made to be mandatory that the water is recycled? It's not much to ask. Instead of letting it just cool the system down and be wasted. And if we're going to build these in Pennsylvania, and they're going to employ 40 to 70 people, mainly in mechanics, shouldn't we have an economic development strategy for every single inch of a data center? And shouldn't we be building the shelving and the roofing and the flooring and every other thing that could be exported globally in this state? And shouldn't we put the incentive on that? And these companies that have been here for 100 years would have the opportunity through state grants to get the machines that they need in order to produce it. So it doesn't just benefit Microsoft and Range Resources.
Mayor Barry.
Yeah, so it's an industrial revolution, right? I mean, AI computing is, and as Mayor Fisher said, it's scary to people. There's some scary things involved in that. I noticed that the European Union today, I read an article, passed the first global framework for AI to not just be prescriptive, but regulatory on how AI is adopted in the European Union. And I think that will help drive some of the rest of the globe. If you can't, do business in Europe, you probably don't develop models that can't do business there. So that will be interesting. I think a couple things are going to happen, like any industrial revolution. I think right now you look at Amazon, they're going to shed 600,000 jobs in the next coming years to automate their facilities, take away the human jobs and put in robotics. I think, with Carnegie Mellon and all the work that they do there. And so I think people can have an opportunity there. If a job is lost, a job is gained. And what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to give people an opportunity to train to those jobs. I think some of the lower level, when I say lower level, I mean entry level, jobs at law firms, some of the research things will, some of the clerical things that AI can do may suffer from that. And those are predominantly jobs, that women have had over the years. I don't think AI is going to necessarily replace teachers. I think it's going to. I think the education system itself is being disrupted, and particularly higher education. I think you're going to see more industry taught curriculum, to keep up with the agility that it's going to take to compete in this new economy. It's an ever shifting thing. You can't build a city around something that takes 20 years to build, because in 15 years that thing will be on to the next thing. So you've got a community college here at this point. I understand, that agility to quickly upskill people to work in these new jobs. I think you can take someone who lost this job but gained this job in the process if you give them those opportunities. And I think one of the biggest things that's going to happen with AI is it takes so much energy. Takes so much energy to do it that our grid is not going to be able to handle it. And I think you're going to start seeing a privatization of the electrical grid in this country. I think a lot of it's going to be nuclear at this point. I think we shied away from nuclear for a long time in this country. I think whether you think that's a great idea or because it's clean energy per se, or you think it's a terrible idea, I think you're going to see that. So I think the electrical capacity in the world is going to go up exponentially because that's where equity is going to flow. And I think we will benefit from having, I think that is if you're interested in a cleaner grid, I think you'll have a cleaner grid when it's all said and done. Then I think when AI, if they come up with efficiencies and economies of scale with that, it won't take as much energy and we'll have an abundance of energy from it. So I think there's some really good things that will happen. I think from a medical standpoint, from diagnostics, from these things to fight disease, I think there's an enormous upside. I've met with some people that are in that world of AI, and not too many of them, in my opinion, are acting like they're scared that it's going to be, the science fiction movie end of the world thing that some think it is. But, nobody's saying it can't. So I think it's like anything else. I think it's going to have the capacity to build the grid when we've had it. It will get government out of the inaction business on the grid, and our infrastructure from that standpoint will be much better for it. And I think we can help folks because people are smart. I mean, let's just say it. People are smart. People are capable. If your job's gone because AI could do your job today and you've got the gumption, we will train you to do that thing so that you can use that tool to do the next job, and hopefully there'll be more opportunity for you in that. So I'm skeptical but optimistic.
So here is where I'm going to ask for forgiveness from the audience. You have a lot of great questions, but it is challenging with three minds as bright as these to get through as much as we have here. I'm also going to ask your forgiveness because we're in a bit of overtime or the 11th inning of the World Series in Game 7 at this point. So I'm going to ask for you to just stick with us for just a little bit longer. I'm going to ask these gentlemen a final question that I hope does justice to sum up those that we didn't get to, and I think it's both a looking back on your accomplishments legacy question, perhaps what you're most proud of and what kind of advice you would give to an audience in Erie, Pennsylvania, something you accomplished, something perhaps you didn't accomplish that you wish you had if you had more time or more resources, or a campaign slogan for citizen to get us engaged more in our community, our role in office as citizen. Before you all answer that, give you time to think on it, I will thank you all for coming out tonight, and I will remind you it is just Monday night. Tomorrow is, in fact, Election Day, so we hope you're practicing democracy, taking the night off from our programming, but we do have events Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and 4 more events the following week. You can find more information on our website, jeserie.org. Of course, thanks to all of our Global Summit sponsors, including tonight's event sponsor, Erie Insurance, for empowering this, making this kind of dialogue happen, a platform for civil civic dialogue where, in fact, Republicans and Democrats can sit on a stage and not talk about being Republican or Democrat to each other and be productive in that conversation. Lessons to take us home tonight, perhaps something that you accomplished that you think would be of value for an Erie audience, something you didn't get to that you wish you had, or a campaign slogan for role of citizen as we head off into the night and into Election Day tomorrow. Mayor Barry, let's start with you.
So if you ask any honest mayor, they'll tell you they learned a lot more about what doesn't work than what does. And if they tell you that, they tried. And so I don't know if I have a great answer to this. I just want to make this a call to you. I mean, my wife and I went all the way to the Norman Rockwell Museum to see the painting of the last real town hall, right? And I say that kind of jokingly, but we as citizens, as I said earlier, we get what we incentivize. What I'm asking you and everybody is incentivize the things that you think are important. We are doing, and we have done for a long time in this country, we are doing a poor job of training and teaching civics to the younger generations. We're doing a poor job of living up to those ideals. We have an election tomorrow as well. We may have 20% voter turnout. Shame on us. Be accountable. You want us to be accountable. My folks that I serve wanted me to be accountable. I want you to be accountable. I want the business community to be accountable. I want the business community to stop asking for a better workforce coming out of high school without putting any skin in the game. I want you in the classroom training. I want you putting your resources. You've got Erie Insurance putting up significant resources for this. That's a civic duty. They're doing a fantastic job of that. What are you doing? What are their individual employees doing? Are you volunteering for a civic organization? Are you teaching kids the value? You know, I can whip out the Scout Law for you right now. But there's a reason that this country came up. I just read an interesting piece on of men and boys. Anybody read the book?
We had Richard Reeves here 2 years ago to talk.
So Richard talks in that book about, you know, why in the 1900s did all of these organizations that we think are just are wholesale today, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, Boy Scouts, Baden-Powell, you know, starting all of these organizations, because in the early 1900s, there were just bands of young men that didn't know what to do, roaming the streets. Sound familiar? So we've got to get back, and I'm not taking anything away from other initiatives, but I'm just saying, and I'm not angry. I kind of sound angry. I'm kind of, once I turn 60, I kind of like, get off my grass. No, but I'm kind of upset, and I think we can get back, but we're not going to get back to where we want to be. Whatever it is that you think that ought to be, every one of you has an idea what you think it ought to be. We're not going to get to any of those ideas until we bring civics back, we teach it, and we teach children, but we also teach adults. And we learn this, look at any initiative that worked. If you can, and the reason it's important to teach a child something about nutrition, about wearing a seatbelt, about cessation of smoking, about all those things, is because they will go home and then teach their adults. And they will harp on mom and dad to do the right thing. Teach them, but don't forget to teach yourselves. And we were talking earlier about this, you know, be lifelong learners and expect, you know, raise your bar as a community, and then we can help you raise that together.
Thank you, Mayor Barry. Mayor Peduto.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Herky, and his folks at JES for putting this together and for asking us to do this. I just wanted to hang out with these guys a couple days, so I really appreciate that we could do it in Erie. I'm going to just follow up on what RJ said, because it's the exact same thing I was thinking. It's not any one thing that we did in 8 years or what we didn't do, even though we had that discussion earlier. And I would say our summer program of having kids learn and earn money was probably something that I consider my favorite accomplishment. And my one that I didn't get done was pre-K childhood education, which is absolutely essential. Every child should start out the same in kindergarten, and that doesn't happen. And the ones that are behind are always behind. They never catch up. But this is a very important night, because tomorrow you're going to go and vote for a mayor. And whoever wins the race, you've got to support that person. And just like the media holds mayors accountable for what they do in the first 100 days, ask yourself what you're going to do in those first 100 days to give your new mayor success. Maybe it's your neighborhood group, and that you'll announce in the first 100 days a new garden that's going to be created. Maybe you're an executive in a corporation, and you're going to announce a new plan to hire 40 more people. Whatever it is that you have the ability to do, maybe you are involved in an athletic association and you're going to create a new tournament. During the first 100 days of this new mayor's administration, give them the ability to stand with you and have success for Erie. Put the politics aside. Think of things that everyone will say, that's good. And you'll be amazed what will happen in the next 100 days, in the next 100 days. And you'll be able to start a new administration with a positive energy that was created by you.
Thank you, Mayor Peduto. Mayor Fisher, final words.
Well, I'll just maybe jump up a little bit. I agree with all of these guys, what they just said, but I would just say find something that makes you happy. Be a happy warrior, citizen, so that you're steadfast, you're determined. You all know it's not easy and going to be easy every day, but there's something burning inside of you that says, I have a conviction to make my city a better place, my family a better family, my neighborhood a better neighborhood. And I know I'm going to face obstacles, but I'm going to have a smile on my face. I'm going to keep working through that, and I'm going to show you there is joy in this journey. And that becomes infectious for your community when you're all talking to each other about, tell me what you're doing. What are you doing? When companies come to town, when people come to town to look about living here, if they feel that winning attitude and that happiness and joy in the community, there's nothing that can stop you. The only thing that can stop you is if you look in the mirror and say, I'm not going to participate. But it goes back to this responsibility of being a citizen. Take care of yourself, take care of your employer, and take care of your employees, but then do something for the greater good for which you expect nothing in return, except you get to live in this great city, this great state, and this great country that is a work in progress, that guess what? We are all owners of it. You are owners of it, each and every one of you. What is your individual contribution? Be happy, be joyful.
Mayor Fisher, Mayor Peduto, Mayor Barry, thank you, thank you, thank you. Folks, thank you for coming out tonight. Look forward to seeing you again at the JES soon. Good night.